some overview first, so they have a chance to get their audio and screen set up. Just real quickly, this session will be recorded, so if you need a copy of the PowerPoint, which won't be much for the recording, then please just let me know after. Just so I know I'm not just speaking to myself right now and that everyone can see my screen, and so that we know where to ask questions during the presentation, if a few of you could locate the question section, because that's where you're going to go ask questions during the presentation, and just let me know that you can hear me and that you can see my screen. That would be great. Thanks, Sheila. Thanks, Stephanie. Carrie, thank you. All right, perfect. All right, so these questions will be cataloged, and I'm kind of going to go through them as I go through the presentation. So we have a large audience today, which is great. So I want to leave a significant amount of time to answer those questions and continue the dialogue about what you have seen here today. I want to keep the presentation to about 30 minutes. I think any longer than that, then I might lose some folks here. So let's go ahead and let's get started. I will let me say one more thing. If you have questions, type it in the questions box now. I'm going to most likely just stop for questions at the end. But if there's something like specific that you want to see or dive a little bit deeper into, just make note of that. I'm always happy to go back into the presentation or into the application and dive a little bit deeper. Let's go ahead and get started. My name is John McGrath. I'm a consultant here with LiveText and work with most of institutions that we're partnered with here in the United States with our other reps that are located regionally. So what the objective here today is to give everyone kind of an overview of how a lot of institutions are using LiveText from start to finish, and incorporate the new features and functions that we've developed over the last 6 months since the last time we gave this presentation. So we're kind of adding on to what those of you who have been on one of my presentations in the past, what we've done. There is a lot of newer institutions that are on this webinar, as well as institutions that are looking into LiveText. So just as a quick overview, we're in about 500 different institutions throughout the United States and globally. And we have a lot of those clients on the phone here. But I won't spend time on a PowerPoint today. I want to spend the entire time directly in the software so that everyone can get a good idea of what are the features and functions, is it easy to use, how might my institution use it, and if you are using it, what additional functionality can I add to it, or how can I better the processes that I have in place now. So we're going to go through a journey kind of start to finish of the assessment process and how LiveText is being used. This is the one slide that I'll show because I think it gives a good overview of who we are and what we do and the journey that we'll take today. So the first thing that we're going to show, or that I'm going to show today, is the planning component of LiveText. And so when I talk about the planning component of LiveText, what we're really going to look at is how can you document, monitor, and report on all of your assessment initiatives. So whether that be managing your outcomes, whether that be building curriculum maps, or identifying what type of measures you're going to apply to outcomes within your courses or outside of the courses, how do you document that and how do you report on it? So that'll be the first part that we'll go through. And once we've completed that, we'll kind of jump into the next phase, which is now that you've documented everything, you've built out your curriculum maps, you know the measures that you're going to use, how do you systematically execute that plan that you've put into place? So whether it's a program at the program level or whether it's at the institution level, we're going to look at some different components on how you might go about doing that. So we're definitely going to take a look at the ePortfolio, course embedded assessments, how you can align different competencies and standards to whatever measure you want, right? So a quiz, a test, a rubric, a grade, whatever it might be, how can we align standards to those measurements and be able to aggregate that data? And then we're going to take a good look into the field experience. So this is a newly released component within the application based upon our previous 18 years of our previous field experience. So this is what we'd like to say new and improved field experience that we'll take a look at, which is how do you collect data outside of the classroom when the student has some type of internship or experience that needs to be collected by external assessors as well as the institution. And once we do that, we're going to look at the improvement, right? So if you've done all of those activities and you've started to implement assessing student performance and capturing those events, what type of data do you get? What type of results? What's the documentation that you can put together to analyze for improvement or for accreditation, compliance reasons? And how do we enter that back into our assessment plans to then cycle to the next term or to the next academic year? So again, this is the last PowerPoint I'll show, and we're going to start that journey here with the assessment planning component. Okay, so let's jump right in. So those of you who are unfamiliar with our assessment insight system, just real quick, there's 3 different roles within the system. So one is an administrator who is more so creating different documents to be pushed out and filled out by the second role, who are the authors, which could be a committee at a program level, could be a non-academic department, but they're filling out some type of documentation that's been sent to them. And then the third role is an evaluator, right? So administrator creates a document, pushes it out to someone who's going to fill it out, and then it can be sent to an evaluator. Now, the really neat thing is, as an administrator, when I create these different templates that are 100% customizable, I can monitor the progress and also report on the input of those documents. So you can create any type of shell, any type of document you want. I'm going to walk through an example of program review. So for many of us on this call, we have to engage in systematic program review and the documentation of that process. So we're going to look at that here right now. So what we're looking at on the screen is I've created a program review template, and here's my library of different templates. Now, you probably won't have that many, but I can toggle which one I want to be able to see. And I'm looking at what is the overall completion of this template, meaning I've pushed this out to all my programs. How many are still working on it? How many have not even started it? And then how many have submitted it? And then as I move left to right and then down, I'm going to start to see a little bit more detailed view, right? What are those actual sections and how many programs have not started it, are in progress, or submitted it, or it's been reviewed. So I created just a very generic template that you'll see here, which is I want everyone to enter in their mission and vision as it relates to the institution. I want everyone to correlate their program outcomes to the institutional level outcomes. I want everyone to create a curriculum map. So it's just a very generic template that I created that I think follows a good workflow, but again, it can be customized however you'd like. And then down here, I have the ability to see what programs, where they are with each section, and then the ability to communicate directly with those program heads or the committee or those authors that are responsible for filling it out. So I might see someone hasn't started. I might want to provide feedback. I'm able to directly do that through the user interface. So the idea is create the template, push it out to your different programs, and then what does it look like to receive those templates? So we're going to go into childhood and early adolescent education and see what they've done so far. So here's the template that was pushed out to them. Again, here's the university's mission, university's vision, and then the department's going to enter in it as it relates to them. Full rich text, and then I just added some components here to show, you really can customize it however you'd like, whether you want them entering numbers, radio buttons, drop downs, whatever you'd like. But something to think about for those of you who are using it or thinking about using it is one of the most powerful things here is that if you build out a question or you're having multiple programs respond on it and you're having a difficult time aggregating that data, put it into the template because that is going to be reportable. So everything that you build in, you can then aggregate up to be able to see those results. So how many full-time, part-time faculty you have, put it in there. So again, you can build it out how you'd like to be able to collect the data that you need at the program or institution level. So we're going to walk through each one of these steps just to see kind of how the workflow is, and then we'll move on to the next section. So learning outcomes. This is an example for those of you in the WASC region at the regional accreditor. We have our WASC core competencies at the institution level, and then we're asking childhood and early adolescents to enter in their program outcomes. So they might be entering in their INTAS standards. If we're nursing, our CCNE, or social work, CSWE. So we have the ability to then just search the database of live text. So if they're national or regional, they should be in there. If they're unique to the program or to the institution, we can put them in there, or you can self-update or self-enter them. But we might, so it's searchable by standard set or even by keyword. So the programs will be able to search and then add them to what they want to tie to the institution level learning outcomes. So this is kind of that starting point. We're going to have our outcomes, then what? Well, let's take those outcomes and define where we're going to be measuring them, right? So we can say, and we do have an integration with your student information system, so it's going to take those outcomes and then look at the courses in which they're being addressed, and we're able to create a legend for all of those programs. Could be 2 levels, 3 levels, any type of terminology you want, to be able to say civic engagement is going to be introduced here, reinforced here, and then mastered here. So we can go through those set of outcomes and go through those INTAS standards to be able to identify where they're going to be assessed, right? And again, the neat thing is, as each one of these programs go through it, and we're looking at institution level learning outcomes, well, we might want to aggregate all this data up to say, where was civic engagement located throughout the entire curriculum, right? Not just education. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to build on this. The next question we're going to ask ourselves is really, we know where, but what are we doing? So we're able to then look at the introduced reinforced that we just stated, and we can click on it. It'll give us a summary, right? This standard was reinforced in this course. What type of measure did we do? So we're able to then say we did a rubric, and the criteria for success is students will be at beginner level, or they'll be at level 3 and hit save. So we're able to define where we should be at that point in time, so that when we're running different reports, we can tell, have we met our goal or have we not? And then we might say mastery, we're going to use an exam, and students will be at, let's say, 85% or better. So we're able to then identify throughout the curriculum what type of measures we're going to do to address these competencies. And then finally, the assessment findings, right? So this is where you probably take a break from entering in and documenting your assessment practices and actually go into that middle phase of, okay, let's use our ePortfolio, let's use our course embedded assessment, let's use our field experience tool to capture these events, so that when you are back into your assessment findings, you're able to easily identify this outcome was reinforced in this course. We used a rubric. We're students at level 3. We can say met or not met, give a summary of that event, attach any type of supporting evidence. And if we did not meet it, we now have the opportunity to enter in some type of improvement, right? We did not meet it because X, Y, and Z. Well, what do we need to do to improve? So we can say, well, we really need to revise that rubric and give a summary of why and hit save. If we just met it, we can just hit save. Or again, if we did not meet, we have the opportunity to enter in, faculty training or more student involvement. And we can have more than one as well. And again, these are all reportable. So now I'm going to have this assessment map that tells me where we're meeting and where we're not meeting. But what the nice thing about the system is going to do is anywhere we put in some type of improvement, it's going to automatically pull that into a table that says, here are the improvements that this program said they were going to make. And this will be the first page when they're prompted to start their next cycle. So what are the improvements moving forward that we said we were going to do last year? So this is how would we, again, be able to document, monitor, and then report on our assessment initiatives, right? So it's that kind of first part. And this is also, this curriculum mapping is where we have a lot of institutions start with live text, right? We need to put into place during our implementation a plan of what outcomes we're doing, where we're addressing them, what type of activities we're going to do. So this is oftentimes a good starting point for institutions. So we just kind of looked at the assessment planning tool, okay? And now what we're going to do is we created those maps, we addressed the assessments. How do we collect the data, right? So what I want to jump to now is I'm logged into a faculty account. So I'm not an administrator, but I'm a faculty. And within this account, I'm teaching English 202. I'm also a career services advisor, and I'm also a supervisor administrating over a student's field experience. So what's really nice about VIA is that you're automatically, if you're a faculty member, going to have your courses with updated rosters. Because of our integration with the student information system, that will automatically be populated as soon as a faculty member logs in on their in progress. But we didn't want to limit it to just this linear process of assessment in courses, right? So what if the assessment's happening outside of the course, like the field experience? What if the assessment is happening between a career services advisor and a student? So you have the ability to create custom groups. Maybe it's a cohort of all freshmen, and they have to submit a first-year portfolio. You can do that. So wherever you want to assess, you have the ability to do that. So let's take a look at what it looks like to actually complete an assessment within a course. So I'm teaching English 202. These are the key signature assessments that I've notated in my curriculum map that we're addressing certain competencies. And I can clearly see the written communication assessment. I have 2 students awaiting. Right? So I click on that, and what happens is my roster automatically pops up from that course, and I can instantly see what students have not yet submitted, what students are awaiting the assessment, and then what students have completed. So to go about assessing a student, I simply click on John, and up pops the artifact that the student submitted. So I'll admit I packed a lot of different assessment measures, functionality into this one assignment, just so that we could take a look at the different ways you can go about assessing, but by all means you don't have to do them each time. So in this assignment, it was to write an essay, watch a video, or write an essay, review a video, take this short quiz, and then self-assess themselves. Okay, so a couple of neat things that are going on here. We have a doc viewer that's built in, so if I'm a faculty member and I have this rubric over here, which is one of the AAC and U rubrics that I'm assessing students on, I can actually just pull up the document directly in the application. So I don't need to have to download, and this is a really large document, I don't have to download anything. I can have it up and still assess at the same time. So that's one. 2 is anywhere you see S1 or S3, that means that there's a standard stamped to that activity. So for instance, if this student wrote a short answer response on their definition of written communication or their definition of critical thinking, this is actually tagged to the written communication WASC core competency. So again, we don't have to just use rubrics to assess student performance and capture those events. We can actually tie them to anything. And the really neat thing that we'll look at the end with reporting is that data can be normalized so that we can look at written communication and student performance however it was measured in one report, which I think is really powerful to be able to do within one system. So we can leave also feedback, so highlight and leave formative feedback for that assignment. You'll see over here that there's an overall grade. This grade can be automatically sent to your LMS's gradebook, We also have an integration, single sign-on, so that you're able to, for instance, in Canvas, complete this assessment directly within the Canvas interface. And if we want to take a look at that, I have some videos to show that. But you'll see that this is an actual auto score assignment. So if I do 15, it's actually going to change the overall grade. So based upon what I enter into this assignment and then automatically scoring the quiz questions, it's going to give them an overall grade. And then we have details within the rubric. If we don't want to expand it, we know what it is, we can just hover over it, or we can make it a little bit bigger, and we can see there's actually core competencies tied to the element of every rubric, element of this rubric, but also core competencies tied to the overall score of the rubric. So again, however you're measuring that particular learning outcome, you can. And then you can leave comments at the element level and finish scoring the rubric by clicking on it. And when you're done, you close it out, and you're able to submit it. And then you'll see that students moved over to green and that process is completed. So with this system, what we've really tried to do is say, well, wherever you want to collect data, whether it's in a course or in a custom group, and however you want to collect data, you can align those outcomes to those measures and be able to collect it. And the users can be a faculty member assessing a student. It could be a supervisor assessing a student. It could be career services interacting with a set of students. So again, that flexibility to be able to build the system how you'd like. Now the other neat thing is for faculty members, as they go through and give those assessments, what type of data do they get? How can they have some type of intervention on their teaching in the classroom? So within every single assignment, there's this assessment results, and it's going to give us 2 reports, actually. How has each student done on the rubric? So Jen was proficient in organization, expert in language, etc. And then what's the aggregated results? So how did my entire classroom do on oral communication? So if I'm teaching a capstone course, I might look at this data and say, whoa, 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 I have too many students at emerging and beginning. Maybe I need to readdress organization. And with all reports within LiveText, you have the ability to drill down. So for instance, if I click on this 3, I can see who the students are, and then I can click farther down to see what did they submit, right? What's the evidence? What's the artifact? We see this being used a lot with faculty to have more dialogue with students, right? So Jen comes in and says, why did I score this way? We're able to click on Jen and pull up the rubric, the comments, the artifacts. So not only are we retaining all of this documentation for compliance and for accreditation, but it's also being used now to have a discussion with students on that activity. So that's a little bit about the reporting at the faculty level. And then they can always export to CSV or export to PDF if they'd like. So that's the course embedded assessment. I'm going to do one more, which is I'm a supervisor, and then we'll get to some more of the exciting part, which is student engagement and how do students interact with the system. So I think it's important to look at how did this person become a supervisor and how are field placements initiated. Meaning if I have a placement coordinator on campus, how might they use the system to align a student with a mentor supervisor, a site, and then report on those activities happening, right? So let me jump into that placement coordinator role. So what's really neat about the system is at each hierarchy level, so it could be program, department, institution, you're able to customize the terminology and the roles within the system. So you might have business using intern, but then education might be using student candidate, right? You might have education using supervisor and mentor, but nursing using some other type of terminology. So the neat thing is I can actually, this is a group of students in this internship, and then here are the supervisors and mentors that are involved within this placement. I can push assignments out to students prior to placing them. So maybe there's some type of document I want them to fill out. I can push out an activity. I also don't have to have all of this information to start the student's placement. So right here I get a great overview of, okay, who are my students? What have I done so far? Who still needs a supervisor? Who doesn't have a site? But as I get that information, so for instance, Angela, I can say, I know Angela's mentor now. It's Brian, and hit save. And then later on, I might say, I know where she's going to be located at Neuqua Valley, and I know what she's going to be teaching, 8th grade. And then when I have that supervisor, I can always add in that supervisor. So in the instance that I'm about to show you, I was entered in as a supervisor so that when I log in, I can automatically see that student's placement, and I have the ability to see what that student has submitted and interact with that student. So when I click on that placement, we'll see the different activities that have been launched to that student. The student's going to self-assess themselves, and then I'm going to assess the student. Or the student's going to be teaching the class, and I'm assessing using a specific rubric. So when I click on one of those, and it's the same process for assessing students in the course, right? You click on it, you see the students you need to assess, you click on the assignment, and then I simply click on the rubric in order to collect the data. I can write any type of feedback. Again, these type of activities are the same ones that we create within the course that can be created in the field. So we can make these really rich type of activities, whether it be rubric-based or formative feedback or self-assessments, and we can tag those outcomes to different working components, which again are going to feed the same reporting engine. So if written communication is being assessed in the course, in the field experience, and then also by the student, we can automatically normalize that data. And now once I've assessed that student, I can go ahead and hit submit, and it's going to push that student over to done, and they're going to get that feedback, and the institution's going to collect that data on the student. The other really neat thing is I have my log here. So as my students that I'm supervising start to enter in their different activities that they've done, I can see who's still waiting my approval, who I've approved, and then who I've rejected, and the last time I updated it. So we can see that Adam, student, is awaiting approval on 2 activities. I can click on that to be able to see what was the activity in, how much time did they spend. They can give a short description of that activity, and then I can come in and approve it, or reject it. And it's going to give me notification, say, do you really want to do this? Yes. So now back at the institution, we're collecting data on those time logs. But I think the really neat thing that we see is it's all in one location. And all those assessments can be completed. So if I'm just a supervisor, then I'll just see this card. If I'm teaching 3 courses, then I'll see those 3 cards. So it's very, very straightforward in terms of what activities still need to be done. Okay, we're a little bit over on time. So let me now jump to a student view. And I think this is really where you get outside the realm of just compliance and collecting data, and you get into student engagement, student feedback, and how students can interact with faculty, career services, and different components. So what a student sees is on their in progress, it's very similar to the faculty member, right? Here are the assignments that I have to do in these groups. But what's really neat is after the student submits the assignment to the supervisor, or after the student submits the assignment to their faculty member and it is assessed, it automatically gets cataloged on this timeline for that student. So what they now have is that over the last 3 years, every key assignment inside the course with career services, outside of the course that they've ever done in one location, where they can always go back and review it. So this is automatically putting different events in chronological order for the students, for them to be able to reuse at a future time. So it might be a video of me student teaching, Career Services might post something to my timeline and say, do this resume building workshop, right? So how does the student interact with different components? Also, as a student, I might want to add in my own work to the timeline. So outside of just that work coming in from those assignments, I might say, I'm in this Greek life and I want this as part of my journey, right? So I can add that to my timeline. And then the timeline is searchable as well. So maybe I want to search by different events. So they're going to have this as they progress, right, throughout the institution or throughout the program. And then what they're able to do is reuse it, right? So they're able to then, and this is where the portfolio comes in, they're able then to say, let me create some type of showcase for a capstone project or for my professional career, or to tie to LinkedIn, where I can make them public or private. So let's take a look at what that is. So you can create these different layouts. Again, it's 100% customizable on how you want to lay it out, what the themes are you want to do. You can add in some different animations if you'd like. But I think the real power is, let's create a new page here. Give it a title, we'll just say webinar. And then we'll create the layout. We can delete a section. But if I want to be able to say, I want to create this showcase, but I want to reuse some things that I've done in the past, right? I have a great philosophy of education statement that I made 3 years ago. I can come in and say, I need text, and then I want to choose it from my timeline. So that timeline of that field experience video, or from that EDU 330 assignment, or that interaction with group learning that we did with Career Services, whatever it might be, I can come in here and select those events. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. It could just be a paragraph. It could be just a video, just a picture, and hit save. And it's going to curate those events from that timeline. So again, the students are automatically going to have this timeline as they grow, and then what they can do is reuse those events to be able to create some type of portfolio. We might want to say, I want a representation of my timeline in my portfolio. So we can add over timeline and then select which ones we want and hit save. So now it's going to have the artifact behind it, but it's going to show when I completed these different activities, or even pictures. So we want to grab a picture from the timeline of this engagement and hit save. So very easy to reuse different components, but it's not to say that I can't just start creating my own content directly on there, or I might drag over my info. Again, you can choose themes, edit the description. So what is the card going to look like? What is the small description on there? And then be able to share it out. So when we get to the share, we can actually slide this, make it public or private, and then be able to share it out to Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. We can email it out. So whether it's for personal or whether it's for, again, professional development or a course, we're able to make it public or private. You can also, as an institution, create the shell of a portfolio and provide that to students, where then they can search their timeline, put in different artifacts, and submit it for a course as like a capstone project. And obviously then that can be assessed. So let's take a look at, this is one that I made quite quickly, but just want to be able to show how you can create the colors and the animations and have different types of components in there. All right, so we looked at the planning, right? How do we document what we're doing? We looked at how do we collect assessment data? How do we engage students in those activities? How do we provide feedback? What's the end result, right? What type of reports do we get? So how can we determine if we're meeting or not meeting our objectives? So I want to take just a couple minutes here now to show you the reporting side. All right, since we've stuck with WASC throughout the presentation, we'll stick with it now. what you're able to do, I'm going to show two reports here, standard report and rubric report. I'm able to select a set of standards. What that means is it could be my INTAS standards, it could be non-academic outcomes, whatever you've entered into the system that's been used within an assessment, you'll see here. Okay. And it's going to give me a description of what those outcomes are. And what I'm able to do is run as many different queries as I'd like against these set of standards. Okay, so the way I would run a query is I can select new query, give it a title, we might just say university. We can look at the term, so time frame, and then we have all these different types of filters. Now, where these filters come from is your student information system. So we can start to filter by major, ethnicity, academic year, students, assessor, course, and then we are bringing in, you will have the ability to bring in custom data as well. So the data that you're able to run queries on is student information system data, custom data, and then any data collected in LiveText. And what it might look like to run some of these reports is we might want to, I ran some queries prior, we want to look at how the whole university is doing on critical thinking, how business is doing, how education is doing, how nursing is doing. So break it down by college. Or we might just want to look at all of our students and how they've progressed from freshman to senior year this year. So we can start to look at how many freshmen were at where they needed to be, how many sophomore, how many junior, how many seniors, and we can do this for all of them. Now, again, I talked a little bit about it, the ability to drill down into the reports. Right? So if I want to see who this 51% is, I can click on it and be able to see what the assessment is, who the submitter was, who the assessor was, and when did it take place, and then furthermore, what was the artifact? Right? What did that student submit? What were the assessments? What were the comments? What was the grade? So again, we have that evidence of student learning. So that's a standard report. Again, it's looking at any set of standards and then running whatever queries you want. And again, this would be wherever that's tagged. In a rubric, in a short answer, in a quiz, you're able to pull that into this report. And then the rubric report, same concept, right? We're able to look at the rubrics that we've used to assess. So we might say writing and run different queries. So we might say we want to look at this rubric and how the whole institution did in 2014 and run that report. So here's how the whole institution did in 2014 on this writing rubric. Then we might want to say, let's also look at 2015. And run that report. And then we might want to say 2016 as well. And run that report. So now what we have here is an element comparison of how we did on 2014, 2015, 2016. Again, the ability to drill into it to see who were those 4 students and what did they submit. But we can also kind of have a different look at the data depending on really what we want to see, meaning some of us create rubrics within overall element, right? Overall written communication, overall critical thinking score. Or we just want to look at one element. We can remove the others and look at just the elements on how we performed, just this element of how we performed in 2014, 2015, and 2016. I will say too, you don't have to look at just an element comparison. We can switch it over to the whole rubric of 2014, 2015, and then these can all be exported out, any report in LiveText, into a PDF that gives you what's the description and then what's your report look like. So again, as you start using the system and tagging these outcomes in different locations, you're going to start to be able to get this really rich data on how you've done, which you can then put back into your assessment plan, right? And then enter those improvement codes and then start that cycle over. So that's LiveText. We spend most of the time in the product. I'm sure with the audience there's a lot of questions. I'm going to try to get to as many as possible, but if for those of you that are hopping off a little bit early, I hope that we were able to go through how we execute the planning, the data collection, and the reporting, and how you would do that from an institutional standpoint or program standpoint from start to finish. Right? I know it's a very in-depth process that we tried to cover in a short period of time, but if there's questions, I don't think I have my email on this PowerPoint. Let me type it in here, john.mcgrath@livetext.com. Shoot me an email, and I'll be able to get right back to you. All right, so let me pull up questions here. And we have quite a bit, so bear with me. Will this webinar be available in a slide audio format after the webinar? Yes, it will. Thanks, Kyle. Oh, sorry, that's in disregard. This is AIS. I was thinking we were reviewing VIA. Yes, we are reviewing both and the interactions between the two. Okay, can you back up and show how to create the assessments? So this is really unique to VIA, and I think what's really important to what we've built, which is the flexibility and the ability to create really rich learning activities. So you can select a workflow when you start to create an activity. And this can be pushed out from an administrative standpoint into different courses, or it can be created up to course level. But you can do a standard workflow, which is student to supervisor completed peer, right? So there's peer-to-peer assessments. Assisted, which means you might have some type of teaching assistant or someone that's creating or doing the initial assessment that's being overseen by a supervisor. Form, which is student submits, it's done. So this might be an example of the students filling out some type of form that's linked to outcomes that doesn't necessarily have to be assessed, right? It's just radio buttons and drop-down buttons. And then observational. So observational might be me as a faculty member sitting in the audience assessing the student's oral communication skills. But the way that we would go about building out a template would be like this. So I have my different components similar to the portfolio that I can drag and drop into the activity. So if I want to give it a title, say assignment number 1, and then I can create the layout. If I need to add in rubrics over here, I can add in my critical thinking rubric and hit save. And then if I want to start to tie in, say, a short answer question, right? I can say, this is question 1, and there's a score to it. It's worth 50 points. Minimal word count, just say 2, and hit save. Now, if I want to tag this question to a standard, I can simply say tag standard, and then again, I can search the database, and we might say, let's say teamwork. And then I can set a range, right? 0 to 50. What does it mean to meet or not meet this competency? We'll say 40, and then hit save. If I want to add another component where the student's writing an essay, so we'll say attach here, or whatever your directions are, there is a score. It's going to be worth 50 points as well, and hit save. We can tag a standard to there. Now, what's really neat about this system is the ability to auto-score. So what I mean by that is, what if it's not just, when we look at this tag, what if it's not just met, not met, right? Because right now we're setting a threshold of anything below 40 is not met, anything above is met. What if there's multiple levels? Or what if we have an institution rubric that we want automatically filled out based upon the student's responses and have it be blind to a faculty member? What we can do is create an auto score on this rubric. So we're going to say we want to auto-fill this rubric, and then it's going to give me the different elements. So in this critical thinking AAC&U rubric, the first element is explanation of issues. The second one is evidence. And we can tag this element to these 2 components that we created. Right? So I can say select components, the question 1 that was worth 50, the question 2 that was worth another 50, and hit OK. And what we'll see is I can change these. 0 to 20 is going to, and this rubric should actually be flipped. 0 to 20 would be capstone 4, 20 to 50, 3, etc. So when I come in here now and I give the student 30 points and 30 points, then they're going to automatically fill that rubric based upon where they fall and that threshold that I set. So it doesn't have to be just met, not met. We can create that auto score. And we have all these different types of components, and everything can be customized. So for instance, who's able to see it, who's able to fill it out, who's able to see it once it's done, all that visualizations and permissions can be customized. And then they can be distributed out to the different courses or to that curriculum map that you've created. Okay. Does this tie into the LMS? So yes, it does. So we do have a deep link single sign-on for those LMSs that are LTI compliant, meaning, so I gave an example within Canvas, and for those of you that want to see it, let me know. I'll send you the recording. It's a quick, like, I want to say 30-second video of how a faculty member assesses in Canvas and the grade is automatically sent back to the grade book. But we do have the single sign-on as well as the deep link grade return. Question in Canvas. Can one person have multiple roles? Absolutely. So in that example that I showed you, I was teaching, I was a supervisor, and I was a career services advisor. But the really neat thing too is I might have another group below that where I'm actually not overseeing the group or completing the assessment. So I might be in a group of all faculty members that are writing end of the year reflections that's being assessed by an institutional committee. So I can actually play as many roles as I'd like, and they all fall within that in progress of things that I need to do as an individual. And faculty members will also have their timeline, so they can create their story, their journey as well. And if those things are being assessed by the institution, like the end of the year reflection, that'll be posted to their timeline. Can the portfolio pages be hierarchical? Yes, they can. Can you bring in evidence from different measures, such as quizzes, essays, wherever standards are aligned, into a single report? Absolutely. And so that would fall within the standard report. So this is a question on field experience terminology. So real quick, let me show you. So within an admin account, this is going to be created through the student information system where you have your hierarchy. But what's really neat is within each hierarchy, so say nursing, or where's my education? I have my unique field experience tab. So what that means is the terminology that I'm creating and the categories that I'm creating and the sites, that's all completely customizable. So student, candidate, supervisor, mentor, that'll be unique to me. Now, nursing might be operating with a different field experience terminology, and they can create what's unique to them. So at each level, you're able to see and create how you want the system to work. Can these templates be created by administrators? Yes. So I can actually create templates directly here and then push them out to the different courses. Right. Let's see here. Can assignments be converted into portfolios? Absolutely. So when building out that template, you can say convert to showcase. and that will automatically convert that student's assignment into a portfolio. That's saying, can I be sent the recording? What is the process, this is a great question, to transition from LiveText current platform to LiveText VIA? So for some of you that are on this call, may not know, we launched VIA about a year to 2 years ago, and so we still have our legacy version that we have institutions on that we're going to continue to build out for, and we're going to continue to enhance. For those of you that are looking to make the transition, I won't spend too much time on this. Send me an email. We'll set up a call to look at things like when is your next accreditation visit? What type of data are you wanting to migrate over? How do we get students, faculty transferred over? So it's a very simple process, but we want to make sure that we're doing it at the right time, that this is the right platform for you as you move forward. So we'll set up a call, and we'll go into how we would get everything over from rubrics to your process. So, good question. Lots of questions on that. I'm doing my best to get through these, so bear with me. Can we copy assignments from term to term? Yes, absolutely. Again, how quickly can we transition from LiveText to VIA? Please send me an email. We'll set up a call with the implementation coordinator to review both accounts. Yes, you are able to embed YouTube videos, and you are able to embed different types of those components that you saw on the left-hand side. How long is a student account active? It's really up to the institution. We have some institutions that are doing 5 years, some that are doing 7. Either way, after the student has left the institution, they can always continue to utilize their accounts. There is an annual cost for them, but it's very minimal. I want to, if you need that cost, let me know. I don't want to say something that's wrong, but it is very minimal. I know we're running out of time. I'm trying to get through some. There's a lot of questions on what is the cost of LiveText. Shoot me an email. It's really dependent on what the business model is that you're looking to adhere to. But for those of you that are using LiveText, the cost does remain the same for those students and for the purchasing model. There is no upgrade fee that you're going to incur. So when you feel that you're ready or you want to look into this system, please just keep that in mind. It looks like there is a bit more. I will, even if I didn't get to you, I will send you an email once I export all of the questions that were sent to me, and I'll respond via email. So I will get to each and every one of these. But it looks like that's, for what I've sorted through, gotten through, I think, all of them. But again, I'll double check in terms of where we're at if I didn't get to any. Let me leave it open just for a couple more seconds if there's any final questions. If not, thank you for joining. We have the recording, we have the PowerPoint. Went over a little longer than I expected, but have a great day. I really appreciate everyone joining us today.